when you put them together, it's the idea is a power for the good of the world, for everyone's benefit, kind of a universal good thing. Now, as I say, these swastikas are not turned the same direction as the Nazi symbol, but when you see them, you immediately say, "Oh, that's a swastika." How is it that all the way across the world over here in India, there are these same swastikas, and you find them in almost all ancient civilizations? You know, either they were all in touch with the same teacher, the same teachings, or they had to be in touch with the same gods, if you will, that for which this was some sort of symbol. What do you think it is?
Oh, absolutely. Pardon me. I think that my honest opinion from investigating the petroglyphs and studying pretty much like what you're describing, the same artwork throughout the world, clearly these things, it started off in the sky. That's my opinion. The swastika was something that originally came from the sky, and they have been using the symbol for many different types of reasons. But I really believe that it originally came from the sky.
So do you think this is maybe a light pattern that was on the bottom of a UFO as it was landing, or what do you think it is?
Well, Kevin, you know my take on this. You know, a little bit of history on my part. You know, I went into this with an open mind. I'm thinking, you know, spaceships, technology, and I'm coming out of this going and thinking something completely different. Not to say that there isn't a possible technology, life form on other planets, but from what I've been seeing out here on South Mountain and some of the other videos from around the world, this isn't technology at all. This is some kind of supernatural race, if you will. It's a creature. Jaime Maussan likes to call them creatures down there in Mexico, and I seem to agree with this. We have these flying worms that seem to shift shape and morph in the sky. Sometimes they change color. Sometimes they look like a tubular shape. And I can understand if someone had seen this tubular shape up into the sky, they might assume that it could be some kind of craft, when maybe it could be another creature. So what I'm thinking is these swastikas was actually a UFO creature that was seen in the sky and was recorded on the rocks, and they took that symbol for many different purposes.
Now, I had a similar conversation with someone else. Actually, before I contacted you about doing the show, and I was in the beginning stages of putting all this together here, and this person said, as I was talking about, you know, all of these petroglyphs that seem to show flying serpents.
That's right.
And this person, and I was trying to put together, you know, that a lot of these symbols, you find them even in the Sumerian culture. And this person said, well, there is no record that the Sumerians had any gods that were serpents, and that's not true. He just didn't know, because there are some ancient Sumerian, we would call them hymns, songs, where the lyrics talk about the great dragon of heaven. Well, the word dragon is the same word as serpent. When you trace it back to where does this word come from, it's the same word as serpent. And so the great serpent in the heavens, then you have these petroglyphs that show the same thing. Look, I tell you what I want to do. I want to give folks a little bit of a background on the people that drew these petroglyphs or carved them into the stone, because I think it's important, folks, for you to understand possibly this civilization was every bit as civilized as the Sumerians were. That's right. And you haven't heard of them. You don't know much about them. They were fantastically advanced considering the time period in which they were living and in which they ruled this valley. So let's start off with that. They're called, we call them today the Hohokam. Now, it's kind of interesting where that comes from, Jeff. Because of you, I went and did some study and some background, and I found out something you probably already know. Hohokam is a Pima Indian word, and in fact, the Pima Indians are not actually Pima Indians. They are the O'odham tribe.
Right. That's correct.
Now, here's what's interesting. There are two...
The desert, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, O'odham means people of the desert. But that's a name that they adopted for themselves after the settlers started coming in. Prior to that, they were called the Akimel, Akimel, and then they called themselves Akimel O'odham.
That's correct.
Well, Akimel, that looked kind of interesting, and so I did some research on it, and guess what I found out? It is a Hebrew name that means empowered by God. Now,
there you go.
Here's an interesting thing. Some people will say, well, it's just a coincidence. Well, maybe. But a lot of those petroglyphs match characters that you see in the Negev Hebrew language. Negev Hebrew is very ancient Hebrew. Okay? And so some of those petroglyphs match the same symbols that you see in the Negev Hebrew alphabet. Now that kind of blew me away. And but there you go. You have Akimel, which means empowered or made strong by God. Akim, El means God. Okay, now maybe that's a coincidence, but made strong or empowered by God, the people of the desert. So how empowered were they? Just how smart were these people? Where they were, folks, is right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix is setting, the whole Phoenix area is setting right on the Hohokam territory. It, of course, was bigger than Phoenix. The Hohokam territory covered about 2/3 of Arizona. But Phoenix is setting right on it. Now, that means South Mountain is setting right in Hohokam territory. That blew me away. These people were geniuses, folks. They really were geniuses. Farmers. They were not the hunter-gatherer barbarians that you suspect and that you think about because you've seen all these Western movies that depict the Native Americans that way. They were not. These people were farmers out here in the desert. Right here in Phoenix metro area, in what is today the Phoenix metro area, these people had 130 miles of irrigation canals. And they used a series of dams and weirs upriver to control the flow of water into this valley. And they were farming this valley. They grew tobacco and corn and later, much later, cotton, citrus fruits. These people were industrious and prosperous. Now, before we go to break, I'm going to do something. Right up here on the screen, for those of you who are watching on KSS TV, you're now going to see what is called the Casa Grande, the big house. That is a 4-story, multi-roomed, I don't know what else to call it. It's either a palace or an apartment house. But that was built by the Hohokam. It is located approximately 45 minutes south